So the second half of our market update is from Danielle DeMarco. Danielle's our mortgage expert or real estate investment mortgage expert. She not only puts a mortgage on the place you're going to buy, but she sets up a real estate investment plan so that you can go on and continue to buy more real estate into the future. So if you can jump right on, Danielle.
Hello, I'm here. Thanks for the introduction.
Okay.
Today's topic, obviously, we're talking about appraisals. And so, like Tim mentioned, Chantal, who is our guest speaker tonight, I've known her actually for a number of years, and then reacquainted and started working with her about 5 years ago. So she's an owner of Lawrence and Walker Appraisals, which is a huge appraisal company in Alberta in BC. And they're our go-to for our financing, for our brokerage. So it's really great to have someone in the industry that you can rely on, like Azad mentioned. If you are running into any concerns or you have any questions on appraised value, that relationship is really, really important when you're an investor, especially. So, a couple of things. I was just going to go through a quick kind of basic Q&A on appraisals and how it relates to financing directly, and then Chantal is going to get into all of the details around appraisals and has a great presentation for you guys. So, first question, what is an appraisal? A lot of people don't actually know what an appraisal is. Again, Chantel's going to get into a lot more detail, but essentially it's a valuation of your property based on comparable sales and is done by an approved and licensed appraiser. So we rely on these in the financing world. Oftentimes we'll get questions, oh, my realtor did a CMA for me, like a quick analysis. Can we use this instead? Unfortunately not. We do need a formal appraisal for the lender. Another question I get asked is, like if I ordered my own appraisal, can we use that? So we have to be the ones to order the appraisal as the mortgage broker. We order it specifically for the lender. It's addressed to the lender and is owned by the lender. So that information stays with the lender that we send your financing to. So we will order those appraisals specifically for a property and a specific transaction with a specific lender. Now, when is an appraisal needed? That's another really common question that I get. So typically an appraisal is required if you are purchasing a home and your down payment's more than 20% down payment. So less than 20% down payment, we've talked about this before, you're a high ratio CMHC insured mortgage, so they do auto valuations on properties internally, so we typically don't need appraisals for that. But when you put down 20% down payment or more, then we no longer pay that CMHC insurance premium, so then an appraisal is typically required. The other times it would be required is always on a rental property. So if we're purchasing an investment property with the intent to rent it out, we would order an appraisal. And then secondary with that is we actually order what's called a market rent letter. So a market rent letter allows us to utilize rental income on a property that we're purchasing, and our appraiser estimates the market rents using comparable rentals in the area and arrives at a number that's reasonable for the property you're purchasing. And then we as mortgage brokers can actually use that rental income that the appraiser comes up with in our application to help you qualify for a higher purchase price. So it's a really great program and system, and it's called a market rent letter. And then the final time we would really need an appraisal is on a refinance. So if you already own your home and we are looking to take equity out of that home, then we would need to do an appraisal to confirm current value, because the banks are obviously going to lend you equity. So they want to know what the value of the home is so that they don't overlend. So in Canada, we can refinance up to 80% of a home value as a general guideline, not more than that. So the appraised value is going to determine what 80% of that appraised value is. That's going to be the maximum mortgage that we can borrow. So in that case, an appraisal is really important to make sure we have enough equity to do what we want. Some people refinance to pay off debt. Some people refinance to get out down payment to buy another property. There's multiple reasons we can be refinancing. So we just need to make sure that the value is there so we can access enough equity to do that. Another question I get is people sometimes get hesitant around ordering an appraisal. I think it's actually a good thing. So when I'm talking to all of my clients, if we're ordering an appraisal because we have a 20% down payment, that's a good thing for you and your realtor. It acts as a check and balance system to ensure that the value, the price that you're paying for that home, that you're not overpaying. Like Tim and Azad just mentioned, the market's changed dramatically in a matter of time. If you don't have a great realtor like Tim and Azad, who's telling you a realistic home value, if you're going in and buying a property and the property's been listed too high because the seller is being a bit unreasonable or isn't following market trends, you want to know that what that property value actually is so that you can negotiate price if needed. Or you can go back to the seller. Tim and Azad can go back to the seller and say, hey, we got an appraisal. We paid we offered 500, but it's coming in at 490. So we need to meet somewhere in the middle, or, we can use that as a negotiating tool. So I always think it's a great thing. It acts as a check and balance system. One of the topics I know that you guys had put on social media for the seminar is what happens if an appraised value comes in low. So on a refinance, when we're pulling out equity, we would look to see if the lower appraised value affects what you can borrow or not. If it doesn't, then the appraised value really is irrelevant. It doesn't affect our financing. Like I mentioned before, you can borrow up to 80% of a home value in Canada. So if an appraisal comes in at 500,000, we can borrow 400,000. If we have to pay off debts, get a down payment out for a purchase, pay off the mortgage, etc., and we need 410,000, well, then that's where we might run into a little bit of an issue because the appraised values come in low. So what do we do in that case? This is where like Chantal comes in, having that relationship. So having a mortgage broker and a realtor who have a relationship with a really, really strong appraiser is going to be important, because we can pick up the phone, have the conversation with Chantal or her people at Lawrence and Walker, and we can say, hey, this is the value we really need. We're really close. We're out by 10,000. Is there any other things? Like, can you talk to the realtor? Can they provide a little bit more information on the property that maybe we don't have? Give some insight, and then can those values be adjusted? Now, we're not adjusting them outside the realm of where they should be adjusted. I want to be very clear. We are remaining within the lines that we are allowed to remain within, but there is a little bit of flexibility there. Whereas if you're dealing with a broker or realtor who doesn't have that relationship and is just ordering an appraisal through a system and doesn't know the appraiser, that ability to have that flexibility is gone. And that can be really important when we're purchasing and refinancing. So it's really important to have that. Now, another time that an appraisal and having an appraiser is a great asset is in the BRRRR strategy. So we talk about that a lot. So if you're going to purchase your property and you're going to renovate it, rent it out, refinance down the road, we will need an appraisal to confirm the value of that renovation. So how much has that property value increased? So that's where the appraiser is going to come in and look, okay, what did the property sell for? What's in the area? What improvements have you done? And they're going to make adjustments for that value so that we can borrow more equity and use that equity for down payment, for example, on another property. And then purchase plus improvement. So this is a really good one. If you, again, kind of two different processes, if you're putting down less than 20% down payment, there's typically not an appraisal needed if you do purchase plus improvements. So let's say you buy a property, it has an illegal suite, you want to legalize the basement suite, we get a quote, you do the renos and work is complete. In that case, we would have an appraiser go out and check off the list and just say, yep, okay, check, it's legalized, check, there's a kitchen, check, there's a bathroom, and they just go through and check the boxes. There's no value attached to it, but it's their job to go through and confirm for the bank that the work you were quoted for, you've done. If you put down more than 20% down payment, then what happens is we get the appraised value as you're purchasing the home, but we also get the appraised value as the work is complete. So we'll get that quote, we'll send it to the appraisal company. And so again, this is where a really great appraiser comes in who understands investment properties, legal suites, how do those affect value, especially in Calgary where rent demand is really high. It's really important to have a great appraiser so that we can get the maximum value as complete post renovation and post improvements. So that's kind of high level as far as financing goes, how we use appraisals, why we use appraisals, why it's important to have a really great relationship with your appraiser, and really make sure you have the right team that you've got your realtors like Tim and Azad, you've got your mortgage broker, you've got your appraiser, you've got your lawyer, everybody kind of communicating together so that we can utilize, all these tools that we have. Again, Chantel will come on, but she is a fabulous resource. She's a great appraiser. We've used her for a lot of years, and it's really helped us when we get in a little bit of a pickle or when we need some help. Sometimes we have really quick condition deadlines depending on the market. We see 4 or 5 business days turnaround. You need an appraiser that is going to be able to go out and do that quickly for you so that we can meet your deadlines. It's all part of having that team in place to make sure that you can write competitive offers, be competitive, and win those offers as well. So I'll end it there on my side of things from financing, but if you have any questions, let me know.
Yeah.
Tim and Azad, are you guys going to introduce Chantel?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, there's a few questions in the chat. I don't know if you want to answer them or
Sure.
I think you can answer some of them. Chantel can answer the rest.
Yeah. So does the appraisal, does it apply to refinancing? Yeah, we addressed that. So yes, absolutely. We need an appraisal whenever we're refinancing. And as a mortgage broker, do you choose the appraiser? So that's a great question. Some lenders will allow us to choose our appraisal company and others will not. So when we're having a conversation with your realtor, when we're having a conversation with you and we're trying to figure out what is value at, are we going to be needing to push the value a little bit? Do we need some flexibility? In that case, we would maybe have an upfront conversation with you and say, hey, we're actually going to go with this lender. And the reason we're going to go with this lender is because we can choose our appraiser. Versus if we just go with Bank B, for example, we have to use a nationwide system, order the appraisal. We have no say in who picks that appraisal up. Lots of times it takes longer. We don't get the values we need, et cetera. So that's a great question. Yes, as a broker, depending on the lender we go to, we have the option to choose our appraisal company. I will let Chantel answer the question. Are you aware if some appraisers are biased? I don't know the answer to that. I don't think it's necessarily bias. It might just be experience, something like that, but I'll let her answer that, as well as the last question there. So I think I'm done. I think that's it for me.
Okay. You gonna put it
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Danielle. If anybody needs, before Chantel starts, if anybody needs to get a hold of Danielle, her contact info is here. Take it down, take a picture of it, whatever you need, and you can set up a meeting with her, ask her questions, whatever. She'd be happy to answer them for you.